Okay, the share today is dedicated to Saul and Michal, right? Stephanie's grandfather. You should have Nachas Ruach and Shamayim and Bracha and Hatzlacha. And Zrat Hashem should be Zochet to see the Gula Bakarov. The title of today's shir is Giving Shir in Cyberspace. And I'll tell you why that's the title. I don't think a day goes past where I don't meet someone on the street who says, "Oh, Travis, how you doing?" I said, "Who are you?" I said, "Oh, we watch your shir." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And you get letters and people, and it's interesting, but and it's good. I think I said once from the Gra. The Gra says there's 3 stages of development by someone who studies Torah. The first one he calls bor. Bor is when you're bor is like an empty pit. Somebody knows nothing is called a bor, and you have to get filled up. That's when you're a student. Then the next stage he calls a be'er. Be'er is like already when you have some water and you're ready to give over to other people. And the last stage is mayin, is when your water goes very, very far. And I always say that's turning time, Get letters from New Zealand, and Africa and Guatemala, people watching a shir. So that's really a mayin. It's going all over the world. So that's definitely a big, big upside to cyberspace shirim, right? That's a big upside. But there is, I think, a downside, and I think we could want to discuss that today, what the Gra is speaking about. Here's there's a special connection, especially in Torah Sheba'al Peh, of Torah being passed down from one generation to another through people, right? And in fact, even Yisro had this brilliant idea that Moshe Rabbeinu was like way overworked. So let's split the work between a lot of different people, and they made Rabbanim for 1,000 and 110 and even more. And that was certainly good because it's true, to wait in line hours and hours for Moshe Rabbeinu was just too much. But at the same time, Klal Yisrael lost out by not having a direct interaction with Moshe Rabbeinu. So this interaction, a student to a Rebbe, they're giving over, so that is very, very, you don't really get it by looking in front of your computer screen in cyberspace. And we're going to see that today from the Gra. I just wanted to say a short story that happened to me. When I went to start my kollel, I went to Reuven Leuchter. Reuven Leuchter was one of the big Talmidim of Ravoba. And he goes to me, he said, because he's Swiss, he says, why do you want to start the kollel? Why do you want to start the kollel? He says to me. So I said, I want to give to people. I said to this, I want to give over Torah. He says, this is your first mistake. He says, you don't give like this. He says, you give like this. He said, in other words, you don't take what you have to say and lay it down on people. You present Torah in a way that people are able to use it and incorporate it themselves and then bring it back, to you. And like Chanoch Nar Al Pi Darko, that's real education. But again, that is something that you need a person, and that is very, very important. Of course, look, there's situations where just can't come, And I meet people who used to come to the shir, and they say they're watching on the shir. I said, "Oh, maybe come and join." It's hard. It is definitely a very challenging thing when you could listen to it, Torah anytime. That's the thing. It's, you're up at. Some guy came to me and shul, and he says, "I want to thank you." So my wife falls asleep every night listening to your shir. Like it solves her insomnia problem. Yeah, right. I want to really thank you for that. Right. Okay. So maybe they'll give me a donation. Cool. But the point is like this. The point is that it's really, really important. And so the Gra is going to explain here why. So let's start here in Parak Yudalid, Pasuk Dalit, right? And again, it's Mishlei, it's Mashalim. So we have an interesting mashal here today. Pasuk says like this: Parak Yudalid, Pasuk Dalit. Be'ein alafim avus bar, urav tzuas b'koach shor. Alafim is a wording which means cattle, right? I think cattle. And the Gra brings from a pasuk in Tilim, right? Seen of alafim, cows, right? Female cows, actually. So when you don't have cows, so then the avos, which is the trough, is rake because you don't have to feed them, right? Right. He says like this. Ein votes for. I'm sorry. It's talking about cows that ki miftach lo yishter ad maso lo tzibar. If you don't have, talking about oxen that are plowing, right? There won't be any wheat, right? Not just to feed them, but you won't be able to grow wheat because you needed the cows to plow. Avorav tvuas nimsa mishiesh lo koach shor lecho ulavod avodasa, right? So if you have cattle, right? If you don't have any cattle, then you won't have anyone to plow. But if you have a shore, then you have a something to work for you, a bull, and I guess something to plow for you. That's the mashal, right? In other words, if you have plowing power, then you'll have wheat. If you don't have plowing power, you won't have any wheat. And if you have plowing power, you have wheat. So what's going on here? What's the Indian? So it's a girl like this. By Indian who? Ki alafim ulashin limuds, right? Alafim, it means cattle, but it also means limud, like an ulpan, right? Ulpan is learning. That's limud. Va'amar be'ein alafim kishe'ein lo talmidim imi lilmud, right? Or let's say a person is giving shir. Some people give shir to 10,000 people in front of their computer. Okay, sometimes there's a Zoom, right? But sometimes they're just sitting and speaking in front of the computer, and 10,000, 100,000, maybe even 1,000,000 people are listening. But there's no one to speak to. They're just speaking to themselves, looking at their own picture on the computer. So, kshe'ein lo talmidim mililmod az gama avus hu ba'atzmo nasa bar reik v'nakol. Right? Then a person is lacking something very critical. Is it? Urav tzvos b'koach shor. Right? But perish she'yisra lo tira kishlei shel koach shor dahainu talmud hagen. So when a person has good students, right? The good students will ask them questions. In fact, the Gemara says about Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, right? They met in an interesting way. Right? Rav Yochanan was near the river, and he saw Reish Lakish, and he understood the tremendous potential. He convinced him to marry his sister, and he became one of his students. Reish Lakish, by the way, means the head of the mafia, right? Reish Lakish was the head of the mafia, right? He was carrying a machine gun. He had an open shirt with the necklaces, and he was like really. So Rav Yochanan says, why don't you come learn Torah? Right? He was Makarvim, and after he came to his yeshiva, right? So every single thing that Rav Yochanan said, he would ask him 13 questions, or 12, 13 questions, and that seems like really annoying. Person trying to say shir, another question, right? But when Reish Lakish passed away, Rav Yochanan was devastated. So like, my Torah is not. They were just bringing proofs to him. The Torah lacks the quality when you're just saying things and it's completely accepted. Of course, if you're learning the Gaon, it's hard to. There's not too much you could ask. You could ask to explain it. We can't really argue with the Gaon so much because I was by Rav Sternbuck's house on Shabbos, and he happened to have Reb the Sefer, the commentary. The Vilna Gaon has a brilliant commentary on Tfilas Chana on the Gaon. He says she covered all of Jewish history. And in that Sefer, so Reb to just write something about the Gaon. And he says he was called the Gaon. Today everybody's called the Gaon, right? If you're a Gaon, that means like maybe you know how to read a Rashi on Chumash today. But the Gaon was called the Gaon because he was really like a Gaon, like somebody who lived 1,000 years before him, right? And he himself said that he had the neshama of the Rabbanan Savaroi, right, who were right around the time of the Gaonim. So when the Gra says something, it's very hard to argue, with him. What's that? It's before the Gaonim, right? Right before, actually, right. You're right. That period right before the Gaonim. But good points, right? See, that's a proof. But right. But today, like Mashal, I said a shir about on Shabbos and Kashrus, Kli Rishon, Kli Sheni, and like it was like they didn't have a chance to breathe, just firing questions at me, like left to right, which is good, because that way you have to really be prepared. I once in Panovich, the Rav gets up to speak and they just like bombarded. They had 2 minutes and already they're like showing questions at him. So on one hand, it's nice to let the person finish, but on the other hand, that's called koach shor because the shor has the power, and that's really how a person becomes a powerful Talmid Chacham, is really by having students who interact and ask them to explain, etc. I gave a very what's it called? Controversial shir last week in Chedvus. Was your daughter there? She was there. Okay. I spoke about a topic which usually what? It was Wednesday night. Yeah. It's usually a topic that people don't speak about so much. And I got a lot of feedback from the girls. They didn't let me get away with anything. So that was good. But now the Gra is going to explain. So what does this mean? So let's see what he says here. He gives three pshatim. Yesh b'zeh shlosha perushim. So what does it mean that really a Rebbe needs students, very, very important to be able to say a shir. If I would just sit at the kosel like I do with my other shir and record the shir, it would be lacking something very, very critical. So let's see what he says here. So the first pshat, pasuk eis chaim hi, shnei mini machzik yidei lomdei Torah. Okay, so the first pshat is from the outside, people who support Talmidei Chacham. Echad b'guf, v'echad b'mammon. Zeh chamor v'shur, kamo chamor l'maseh, dainu shiavud l'Talmid Chacham, b'kol gufo, right? Somebody who helps the Talmid Chacham get around from place to place or take care of things for him, that's called a shur. Shenosal of old Talmid Chacham, litin lo siput days, or the alternate. One second, that was right. V'zeh chamor, v'shur kachamor l'maseh shiavad l'Talmid Chacham b'kol gufo kishor l'oil. Shenosa old Talmid Chacham litin lo dais buko asher yichshalo. So both financially and physically, the person he wants to be kesher, connected to Talmidei Chachamim, right? I know Rav Dan Segel, he says a shir on our base medrash every week. Like he has people begging him to give him money, because he's such an incredible tzaddik. And like he says, he won't take money from everybody. Only people are very pure. I spoke to him a few months ago, and I asked him a question, and he laughed. He said, "What, you want me to say Ruach HaKodesh?" And he was laughing. I said, "Yes. The Rav has Ruach HaKodesh, so why shouldn't I be a recipient of that?" So somebody like that, people are really vying to help support him because they want to be connected to that. So that's the first pshat, helping them physically and financially. Okay. Second pshat now. He says here, Hapirish Hasheni kechomor l'maaseh l'nisol of all mitzvahs ulhader achreihem ulasos. Kishor la'ol, the all who all Torah, right? It's Torah mitzvahs. Okay, but the real pshat they want to focus on today is the third pshat, Shlishi, kechomor l'maaseh ki yesh b'Torah pshatei Torah. There's two aspects of Torah. There's a simple meaning of what it says, right? We learn this pasuk in Mishlei, right? When there's no cattle, that's right. There's no cattle, then there won't be wheat, and when there's oxen, there'll be what's it called? There'll be a lot of wheat. Okay, so that's simple pshat. Comes along the Gra and gives a deeper pshat. So says the Gra like this: if you want to really get to deep pshat, really want to understand what's going on, and that's what we mentioned is by the way Shlakish, right? So the first level, just of pshat, right? Lahavin ha'inyan hapashet v'heitev, just what it says. The words say. V'yesh gam pilpul. Pilpul means getting to the next level, right? Levar lavin ha'inyan kushiyas v'terutzim. Someone asked you a question. So what does that mean exactly? What is it, how do you understand that? It might be they just don't understand what you're saying, right? The famous Gemara about Rav Preda, right? Rav Preda had students. He had to repeat things 400 times, right? Every single thing he taught him 400 times, right? So my Rebbe Rav Sikur Shilesky, when I was in Shir, he had 150 people in the Shir. If he had to repeat something 3 times, he said, "Oh, I'm already more than Rav Preda, because 3 times 150 is 450, right?" But imagine repeating something 400 times. You're going to get it quite clear, And to get into Vilna Gaon's yeshiva, by the way, anybody know what the test was? Did I ever tell you that? No, 100 is correct. Though. What? Oh, they're all good answers. Maybe it was true. But what I heard is that you had to say the same Gemara, like 100 times, and say it again, and say it again. He wanted to hear you, like if you're getting frustrated, right? And if after 100 times you were more excited about it, that's because, he would say, like, you need 100 times just to break the surface. I wanted to ask my Rosh Yeshiva, because he would say very deep Shem. I said, how do you get to, you read that? I read it, I don't see it, and you read it, he says, I just read it 100 times, 200 times, And we saw this in the beginning of the Sefer, right? I don't remember exact pasuk because I'm not good at remembering, but it says, Im labina tikra. Do you remember? Im labina tikra, right? It says, the Gra says you get bina by reading it. Because the bina, the deeper understanding, is locked in the words, right? It's like encased in the words. And the more you read it, the more you like pull it out. It's like a pomelo, right? My famous pomelo story. You take the peel off and you get to the fruits, right? Every pasuk in the Torah is like a pomelo, right? The more you read it and the more you think about it and the more you peel off the peel, the deeper you'll get. And this also comes from questions, having to explain it over, the Stipler said giving one shir is like reviewing it 20 times, right? Because if you don't look over it, you don't have it clear, and it forces you to get it really clear, and that's really something important, right? I guess theoretically, if you're just speaking to a computer screen, you also have to have it clear, but it's not the same thing as in front of people. Because if you have no idea what you're talking about, then that's quite embarrassing.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
When you talk to the computer screen and afterwards you get emails from people, they ask you questions on the share?
Sometimes. More of it's usually just to say thank you, or I say, like if you want my tefillah for a brevda or something, right? I'll tell you something. Again, like I have tremendous hakaras dov. I want to listen to my shir. I'm not telling anyone to stop, right? But when you're driving a car, look, charting time is great. They say it's God's reasons for it, and they're probably right. But you can't concentrate to the same level as you're sitting in a room with the person, right? If you're sitting in the room with the Rav and you're sleeping, when I first started giving shir, it was about 20 something years ago. I started in Ramat Beit Shemesh in the Grosh, even before Kornfeld was there. And I was giving a shir on Shabbos, different weeks, sometimes 10 people came, right? And it was some weeks only one person came and he would fall asleep. So I'm sitting there in front of one person who's sleeping. I'm like, wow, this is really a challenge. But it's not so easy to fall asleep when you're the only person in a shir, right? But when you're sitting, in front of a computer screen and just listening, you're not going to have necessarily the same echos. Okay. Now it's true; it is an effort. I was in the five towns, and I remember I'd given a shir in a certain place. What was Birkas Lachama? How long ago was that? Do you remember that?
Like 16 years ago.
Shemitah or something, maybe, wasn't it? Or something. 40, it was at least 14, 15, 16 years ago. And there was a group of like 100 people came to a shir, right? And I said, the shir doesn't exist anymore, right? They don't need it because everyone's at home, listening to all the wonderful shir. And it's good, but it's something missing, right? And let's put in this phrase, let's make it very positive, right? Is that if a person can take the energy and go out and hear a real shir, it's going to go in much more, right? On a physical level and on a pragmatic level, right? And a spiritual level. A spiritual level, the words make an impact, right? I heard there's a Rav in Breslov. He was saying, I just had to speak to someone that I went in. I heard him saying, sure. He said that in Eretz Yisrael, he said, when people write Chidushi Torah in Eretz Yisrael, the movement of the pen causes the air, to become holy, and that affects, people. So there's something special about words of Torah that it goes in if you're there. Right? If you're not there, it's not the same experience. That's number one. And number two, if there's a real live thing happening, it's a lot easier to pay attention, right? And number three, the benefit of having people there is that if they don't understand, if you see everybody looks like they don't understand what you're talking about, so you have to repeat it, right? So it's a lot of advantages. That's what the Gra is saying here, is that the shore has the horns. The chamor is this pashut pshat, the simple meaning, to explain, and the chamor is the pilpul, right? Levar lav and inyan kushiyas v'terusim, right? Okay, and you can imagine a preda 400 times you listen to it. And Rav Chaim Shmuel obviously will say, well, preda was really big, but what about the students? Can you imagine like the humility you have to sit and again and again and again, and one time he didn't get it. He got nervous because he thought his Rebbe was leaving. Do it 800 times. 800 times. So it's really, really something which is special to be at a real shir. In 20 years from now, our grandchildren, they're like, okay, say, there was once something called a shir. People used to come to a house, on Kablan 22 and listen. Wow, they still do that anymore? I was in the street and a guy was explaining to his children about phone booths, it was like a telephone, you put a quarter in, and someone was like, really? And some museum, they have those things. Like it's hard for us who lived like 2 generations ago, and like we saw the world has changed so much. But in this, some of the changes are really good, you know, but some of them we just have to be careful because there was a big plus doing things the way they've been done for 3,000 years. Okay, so what else did he say here? The reason it's like a shore, which is like an ox, is because the horns are the power of the ox, right? Razal, nagchoi, have like, so if you see in a dream, right? If you see in a dream, 30, let's see, I think that's the one in Brachas, yes. Brachas Nunvav. There's a whole Gemara, there are 2 pages. If you see this in a dream, that in a dream, right? So one of the things, what if you saw a bull in a dream? What does that mean? So it says you'll have children of Talmidei Chachamim, shemenagchim b'Torah, right? They'll be not bullies, but they'll be strong in Torah. V'zeh derech adam, v'zeh shetzarech adam l'shnei dvar. You need 2 things. First, you have to learn Pshat Torah and go over them many, many times, and then you have to get to the depths of the Torah, right? V'gam l'palpel b'liman k'dei shiotzi inyan mezuras muluman b'li kushya v'zeh sham rav tfuos humikoach hatalmud kushor bar karnayim, right? V'chorif gadol b'pilpel. The Talmud is always asking you a lot of questions to explain, right? That is going to get you deeper understanding of Torah. Kumakshu mufarak, he asks and he answers. Umel rav chadashmaitz. It'll be much more. It'll be much more. And that's really, someone once told me, we could say that Rav Kahanowitz, his wife was a Rebbitzin in Iyat. So we went to him quite a bit for Shabbat. He said he was by the stipler. He would come in and the stipler would like scream at him. He said, "You're such a," what did he call him? Like what do they call someone who bothers people all the time in Yiddish? What's it called? No, somebody who really annoys people. Anyway, whatever the word is. But you just drive me crazy in this, but like he really liked it. I was by Rosh Hashanah last Shabbos, and I had a certain question, which like they always know my questions are out of the box, and his son threw me out. And Rosh Hashanah says, "No, don't throw him." Another guy came and he threw him out. He says, Rav, the son is throwing me out. What should we do? He said, tell him to get out of here. Because Rosh Hashanah, 97, he should be gesund. He's on an oxygen machine. But that's his energy. People asking him questions and that, forcing him, even at the young age of 97, right? He should be until 120, right? To still be answering questions for Klal Yisrael, right? And that really forces him to think. It was an interesting question this guy asked. He said, if you have a suffix if somebody's 70 or not, you have to stand up for them, right? So Rosh Hashanah said, no, you don't have to. And they were like arguing back and forth, right? And he was saying this. He said, why yes, why no? But like Rosh Hashanah was really getting into it, and you could see like it gave him life, He's weak now. It's true, he's weak. But like when he's learning Torah, it gives him really chiyas, and that is really important. Okay, so then now the Gross is one more thing here. Okay, v'od be'ein alafim ki achiluk ben alafim l'shor. Why does it say this lashon of alafim? Right, shalafim hem she'ochlen be'ein osim shom malacha. That's what they're originally. Malachim are the cattle, right? They're not v'shroim hem she'omdim l'malachtam lasos. Those are the ones who are plowing, right? Avodasan. L'charish, right? Not like he said originally. Right? If you have a lot of cattle, you have to feed them, but it's going to be gone, and there's not going to be more. But if you have the shore to plow the fields, excuse me, it might be the shvarm eat more. Right? They have to eat more. Right? So you're benefiting from that. If he doesn't have any students, so there's plenty of wheat there, right? Because nobody's eating. Halacha right? No questions because no one to ask. If you're speaking to your computer and saying a shir in halacha, right? it'll come out smoothly because nobody's going to ask you any questions, right? It's going to go, like 1, 2, 3, right? There's no one there to ask you questions. Rav Tavuas, who bought me koch, also shekochu b'shor ba'al kanayim lefalpel levar davar b'heder. Right? You have a question there. You have Talmidim there who are asking and asking and asking, right? And it might be a little bit annoying, right? And different. It's like it says there's what's it called, midos but Talmidim. Some people are really good at asking questions. And they know, when so I was once talking about a certain issue with Rebbe Israel Auerbach, and I just kept talking and talking. I really thought it was mutter. What was about? Oh, it's actually about ice cubes. They have these plastic ice cubes, right? You know what I'm talking about? You put them in wine, right? Because they don't melt, so like it's good it doesn't affect the wine. So I wanted to say you can make them on Shabbos, and I had a lot of proofs to what I was saying, and I also had the Shevet Levi backing me up, right? And he really thought it was usher, and I was asking him, and finally says, I'm not going to say they're mutter. Is that all right? like very derech eretz. But that's the point. You ask, okay, look, I got a lot clearer. I knew what the problems with what I was saying. And he had a lot of. One time he got really upset with me. I brought a salad spinner. You know what a salad spinner is? Salad spinner. So he really got very upset about salad spinners on Shabbos. Not because it's a malacha, he held it wasn't borer, because you could eat the lettuce. Salad spinner spins the lettuce so that it keeps it dry. He held that taking the water off wasn't borer. I also said the same thing, because you could eat it without it. It doesn't, But he held it wasn't Kedusha Shabbos to use such a thing. So I brought one in, a big thing. I put it down. I showed it to him. No. He said, no. Anyway, so next week I brought it back and had another question. He said, listen, take it, lock it up, use it during the week, but on Shabbos, don't use it and never bring it back again. Okay, we're finished. So you have to know, what is the, I think I told you the story when I went to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach with some questions, and he asked me not to ask him these questions, but I've been working on them for a year. I had 10 questions for my Sefer. So I just instinctively asked him the second question, and he just screamed at me, like that smiley thing. I was like in Gehenna, he was screaming and screaming. And then after 30 seconds, he just asked if you have any more questions. And I asked him, but not on that topic. I learned my lesson. And but that's the thing. It's asking the questions really. So that's what he's saying here. If you don't have any questions, so it just goes smooth. You just press the button and you record the share, and then it's finished. And it just no one's going to interrupt you. But if you have people there, then it's obviously a different experience on many levels.
It's still missing the difference between the cattle versus the shore.
Right. Okay. So it's much clearer at the end. That's a good question, right? In my shir and thing, I give out 50 shekels for a good question. I don't have any money now, and I write on it good question. They show it to their wife, and they get covered. But the end, he's saying the cattle, let's say the cows that just milk, they just sit and eat grass. They don't do any work, right? So the trough is always going to be full, right? Because you have to feed them, right? But you're not getting more food produced, right?
But you are. They're getting milk.
They're getting milk, but you're not going to have more weeds. Bar. We're talking particularly about bar, right? And they're not doing malacha, right? It's true that cows are giving milk, right? Assuming that's what we're talking about. That's what it seems like. He doesn't mention the milk either. Right? I threw in the milk, right? But he just says cows that don't do malacha. It could be also like an older cow, maybe. What? It's true, but the mashal here is about production, right?
So the animals that plow versus animals that don't.
They don't, right? The ones that are doing work. So the ones that are doing work, they might need more food, right? That's energy, they take breaks. But you constantly have a influx of new weeds, right? Because of the wheat. We're comparing the wheat to the wheat, right? The cows that eat, right? So you keep filling up the trough, but they're not bringing in more wheat. They're not pulling their weight as well, right? Okay, they're giving you milk. That's nice. But as far as the work goes. So that's the thing. The Talmidim who are asking the questions, right? They are going to ensure that the Rav's Torah is increasing, right? And maybe we could take the mush a little bit, right? Okay, you might have to stop, you might have to rethink, you might not cover all the material that you wanted to cover, right? But at the end of the day, he'll have much more than he started with, and that's really Rav Chaim Brisker used to say that just like there's an Avera Bittul Torah in Kamas, a man can learn 2 hours and he only learns an hour. So that's Bittul Torah, right? He spends an hour, I don't know what, just, I don't know, playing with those little things with your hands, if he doesn't need to do that, a little game or something. But there's Bittul Torah in Eichos. If you could get more deep in Torah and you don't, so that's considered Bittul Torah. And it's also, the Gemara says, Ravcha the Shmaitz Svar, that the reward for Torah is the depth of Torah. You hear something from the Gaon. Sometimes I read a Gaon and I'm just like blown away, right? Like he saw. If I was reading this pasuk, I would think it has something to do with cows and bulls. I would never figure out it has to do with the Rav giving shir to his talmidim and one's asking questions. Like it's incredible. But the Gra knew every single word of Torah, right? And the Gra felt that his mission in life, right, was to bring everything back to Torah Sheba'al Peh. The Gra at the end of his life, he just sat with the Sefer Torah, and he just read the Sefer Torah, and he saw all of the Torah was like Nister, Kabbalah, Gemara, Midrashim, everything is written, like just you can see in the Torah, right? So he brings everything back to the source, and when he reads a pasuk like this, he'll bring in the Gemaras, he'll bring in the Midrashim, he'll bring in the Kabbalah, everything, right? It's like really here the wisdom of Mishlei, and that's a very, very powerful thing, right? That's a very, very powerful thing. The more you get the depth of what is being said in these psukim. Now, Shlomo, I once, Daniel Rabbi Broad, right? He called me and he said, "Oh, I got an email from Ms. Koltoy, and she said a shir from the wisest man that ever lived." I said, "Well, that's no, it's about Shlomo Melech, right?" But the point is, like Shlomo Melech was really, he knew the language that the trees speak. When you go out in the street here on Kablan and it's a windy day, and you hear shh, the trees are speaking to each other, right? When you hear the birds in the morning chirping, they're talking, yeah? And Shlomo Melech knew that. He had an incredibly deep wisdom, and he put that wisdom into the Sefer, If you just learn it superficially, you're losing out so much, So, first of all, we have to be motive to the Gra, really a tremendous Akar Tov. The other thing about the Gra's Ksavim is that, like, every time you learn it, it adds another dimension to your life, right? You read this, and it tells you how you're supposed to interact in a shir, the student and the Talmud, right? So this is very, very, important things, and what it is, what's Rav the Shmaitza, what does it mean that Torah is the Srabe, right? So that's really, really the incredible thing of the Gra. If you learn the Ksavim of the Gra, we're learning now Mishlei. He has on Shir Shirim, he has on Tanakh, he has on other places. It's just incredible. It just builds you a whole outlook of life, how a Jew is really meant to live their life. Okay, that's a plug for the Gra. But he doesn't need it, obviously. But that's the idea. And again, look, if you're in cyberspace, I'm so Marker Tov. Anyone listen to this year in cyberspace, wherever they were? My neighbor told me today, like something very interesting. He says, "Yeah, my kids, they were in Vietnam last week, and then they're moving to Thailand, and then they're traveling across America." I said, "Like, listen." He says, "Yeah, they work remotely, so they just go from Chabad house to Chabad house. They're just like traveling all over the world, and they can do their work, and that's something like really, really interesting, and it's nice. So like a lot of good things coming from this. I know a lot of people they're working remotely now, and they're able to learn another hour or two a day. I think that's a wonderful thing. But this thing about the Shiram, I know a lot of Rabbanim who are talking about it, yeah, and it's on one hand you bemoan it, on the other hand, look, it's a generation, so you have to a certain extent accept it. But you could still, I'm learning the Gross. I'm not saying, just reading over what he says. Okay, let's. Well, how much time do we have left? 2 minutes. Let's do one more pasuk over here. Pasuk Hey. You know what? Let's do pasuk Gimel because we skipped it in short. It's a really important pasuk here. B'fi avel choter gaiva. The Sifsei Chachamim Tishmara. Right? Sifsei Chachamim, very famous quote over here, phrase. We have the Parish and Rashi. An avel, right, which the word evil comes from avel. Avel is someone impulsive, right? Pi avel choter gaiva. Somebody who's impulsive, that's often coming from gaiva. They don't have to. I just read today. Today was not only your grandfather's yard site, it was also the yard site of the Ravsha Rebbe, the Rebbe Ravshitz. And I was walking into my building and I had a quote from him. He said, from the time like he was 7 or something, he never ever said anything without thinking about it first. Right? It's a very, very important midah. The Ramban writes it in Igeres Ramban. Before you say something, think about it. Because it's so easy to speak Lashon Hara. It's so easy to say Onos Tavarim, to the Chavetz Chaim says it's not just Lashon Hara. Shmiras Lashon means not to say sheker, not to chanufa, right? All these things. There's 4 groups that don't accomplish Shechina, right? And they all have to do with speaking. People who flatter, people who lie, people who say Lashon Hara, and people who are latesim. They're just scoffing everything. So that's all included in spiritual Lashon. But Avil is very, very chamor, right? And that's probably why the word evil comes from Avil. Because avil means someone who's impulsive, and the impulsive person, the words just flow out of their mouth without any thought, right? And that often comes from Gaibus, Shalom Melech, right? Al pimashkas of kama pamim shaloshin avil uloshin min avlo perush reishis divrei avil bichataro shumisbarach belivavo lahakos right? Anybody who doesn't agree with him, he'll get whacked, right? Because he hasn't thought about it, so everything is brilliant, right? Aval sisri cham tishmora, peish shachamim nitzalim mach b'shem sgulim sifsoseim milanos lo davar v'aydezehem nitzalim. So many times, I'm sure we all know that, just by being quiet, not saying something, you know. I was with somebody last week and they were like really giving it to me, like really big time. And I knew the person wasn't in a good mood, right? So I didn't say anything. I just kept quiet. I listened. I agreed, you're stupid. And okay, probably the right, look, we all have what to learn. And every time you get an insult and you're quiet, you lose 100 Averas, right? So like, it's just like piling up, like getting rid of, all the Averas. So this is really a smart person, right? Number one. Number two, the Gra says later on, right? He says, answering somebody back who criticizes you, it's like you have a bloody nose and you're going like this. You ever have a bloody nose and go like this? You get blood all over your face. It just, of course, what happens? You're defending yourself and the other person defends himself, and it's back and forth, and just until you're screaming at each other. So the smart person knows the best thing to do is to be quiet. Rev David Cohen told me this about a year ago. I was talking to him. He said, like, it's so wise just to be quiet. You're dealing with people maybe who are difficult. Just be quiet. You're diffusing them, right? Because when they're like, they want you to say something so they can, and that's the Avil. That's the Avil. The Avil says things without thinking. And he's very smart, obviously, in his own eyes. But in such a situation, if you're really smart, you'll just be quiet, and that's Sifsei Chachamim, the lips of the Chachamim thing. Okay, so we learned 2 things, really important things tonight. We're 3 minutes over. We learned that you should come to Shirim if possible, right? If you can arrange your schedule and your husband or your wife let you, and you can find a babysitter, right? And like you get out to actually be in the physical presence of a shir, that's an amazing thing. We said on a spiritual level, because the words go in more, right? The Rebbe definitely gets more because he has response from people and asking questions and asking to explain more, right? And that's really something really valuable. And number 2, when you're speaking, try to be quiet as much as possible. I remember Rav Moshe Shapiro spoke in our base medrash. It was about 8 years ago, and he was speaking about being quiet, shtika. And half the shir he didn't speak, right? And someone was there with one of those recorders that stops when it's quiet, and he said, "You missed the best part of the shir, right?" Because when he was quiet, it was very dramatic. He would like sit there and he would like look at his fingernails like this, because it says Al Pi Kabbalah, the fingernails was what we used to have around our bodies before. It's like when he would look at it, it was like scary, and you would feel the quiet. In fact, by his Levaya, Rav Piltz spoke. Rav Piltz Rosh Yeshiva in Tifrach, and he said on the pasuk, "Kol Duma Madaka," right? So Rashi there says like there's a soft voice that connects you to the silence, which means Like by Hashem is completely silence, right? Hashem doesn't need any words, but you need a soft voice to connect you to that, right? And Rapil said that silence, right? Noise is limited, right? Because you get to 25,000 decibels, but like how far could you go? But silence is infinite, and that's why Hashem's wisdom is characterized by silence. He says, and the Kol Damamadaka is a small voice that connects you to silence. That was Moshe Shapiro, right? He would speak and he would connect you to that very, very deep, infinite wisdom of the Torah. It was very, very powerful. And he would speak. It was so dramatic. Every conversation I ever had with him, I remember it so vividly because he was such a dramatic and such a powerful, powerful person. Anyway, so B'ezrat Hashem, we should be zoche to attend shirim and have shirim and be zoche to be quiet when necessary, and we should be zoche to the gula b'karv. Amen.